Hello there and welcome to In My Opinion 4 Resident Evil 3 Remake. Taking place after the mansion incident, Jill Valentine and the rest of the STARS unit try to warn their higher-ups about the Umbrella Corporation, but are shut down and is all swept under the rug. Small incidents of people eating other people and some rabid dogs have been spreading through the city. Jill, sensing the oncoming doom of Raccoon City, decides to make a plan of escape, though one night during a phone call with a warning, the big BOW himself, Nemesis, breaks through the wall with the sole mission of killing any leftover STARS members in the city. After a valiant escape, Jill runs into Carlos, a member of the Umbrella Private Forces, who is here to help save the still alive civilians. Even with Jill's wariness of anything Umbrella, she decides to work with him and his team to try and get out of the city alive. I actually enjoyed this little prequel, mid-quel story with Jill's escape of Raccoon City. Jill herself is shown to still be a little shook up from the whole mansion incident, which is nicely shown in the beginning sequence. She may come off a bit frigid to the Umbrella Squad, but she eventually warms up a bit and her and Carlos do share some friendly moments. Speaking of Carlos, he's pretty likable as well with some of the smooth lines he pulls. The other cast members like Tyrell fit their role pretty well too, but I don't want to go into too much cause spoilers. I do feel the story keeps it pretty faithful to the original, as most of the stuff that happens there still happens here, just with some rearranging. And I think this gives the game a fresh feeling to Resident Evil 3 fans, but at the same time I don't think it would piss them off, as the core of the story is pretty similar. If you played the Resident Evil 2 remake, then you have a good idea of how to play this game. But just in case you haven't, Resident Evil 3 is a survival horror third-person shooter. Just whip out your weapon, aim, and blast away some terrifying creatures. Where you aim is very important since the zombies are pretty resilient, so body shots won't take them down fast, and it will even take a few headshots to put them down as well. The game does allow you to pick off body parts such as arms and legs, crippling the zombie horde. Also, when you hold your aim, you get a little increase in damage and accuracy represented by your crosshair. With all the shooting you'll be doing, there is a chance you would need more ammo, and while there is some around the world, you can also make some by mixing up powder you find. And depending on the powder you mix, you can make handgun bullets, flame rounds, magnum bullets, and so forth. Another tool you will have access to is dodging, which can be helpful if you're trying to get away from the enemy and in a more safe position. Also, if you dodge just at the right time, you will roll and gain more distance, and you can even set up a slow-mo shot. Just like Remake 2, the gameplay here is freaking great, and it brings the Resident Evil series to the more modern gameplay world. Some might hate it, but I like that the zombies are still a threat, being able to take a good amount of punishment. It also adds more tension as they bob and weave and get closer and closer going for a bite. Inventory management is still important as you start off with limited space, but thankfully pouches are here to collect and increase your slots. You just need to be sure to really look everywhere for items such as safes and locks that need a little picking. Of course, you also have your storage trunk to put away stuff not needed currently, and all of them are connected, which is a big help. When it comes to puzzles, this game is really lacking, even more than Remake 2, and there wasn't exactly tons in that one to begin with. I just really wish we got a little more, and it didn't have to be super brain teasers, but at least on the level of Remake 2. It also doesn't help that this game does feel a little more linear than Remake 2, now allowing for more exploration and less puzzles. Like I mentioned, this game does have a dodge mechanic, and it works pretty well once you get the hang of it, with it just being a simple push of a button in direction. It comes in real handy since this game, while having some open space, has more tight areas than the previous Remake entry, so you can be grabbed easier and piled on. Now, it's not a live or die situation if you don't master it, but it can save your ass at times, especially when Nemesis comes around. Speaking of Nemesis, let's talk about him. They made him still a threat, as if he gets close to you and starts swinging, you will take a lot of damage, with only 2 hits putting you close to death on standard. He's also ridiculously fast, as one moment you think you lost him, only for him to zip right up to you, almost looking like he just teleported, and then proceed to put the hurt on you. He even has tentacles to trip you up. With all that, you would think he'll be a relentless, challenging beast, and well, yes and no. Yes, in the fact that he could be up your ass pretty fast, and no, as you can stun him easily depending on your aim and equipment. Also, he only appears in the beginning city parts, and once you're out of there, he starts to only show up in set pieces and boss fights. It seems like sadly the constant complaints of Mr. X in Remake 2 were heard, so they ended up softening up Nemesis a bit, and even gave him a weak point to inflict more damage, as long as he doesn't block it. He's a bigger threat on higher difficulties, but on standard, once you got it down, he's not much of a problem. At least when you take him down for a short time, he gives you a chest before he gets up, which can hold ammo, but more importantly, it can hold weapon parts. The weapon parts are actually a great help as they can cause more damage and raise accuracy. He doesn't have all of them, as some are lying around hidden. Even with the negatives I mentioned, I still really enjoyed facing him in those beginning parts, so much that I wish he showed up more randomly around. I also did enjoy his boss encounters, and to keep from spoiling them all, I'll just focus on showing one. These felt really tense and overall just fun, with you still running around and dodging and trying to survive and take him down. He also still packs quite the punch in these boss battles. Okay, I'm going to touch on what a lot of people are talking about with this game, and that's some of the things from the original missing and how I feel about it. Now, this may be spoilers for those who want to find out themselves, so if you have no curiosity about this, then skip to this time mark. First thing is the live selection moments, where you could have picked from 2 options in certain situations, mainly involving Nemesis. Depending on what you chose made events play out a tiny bit differently, like you enter a spot from a different direction. The only reason I missed this is solely for replay value's sake, as in the original it never felt world changing when I picked something else. The only thing I felt had any real big impact was the second different ending you could have gotten, which again wasn't a world's difference. Since I felt the remake story was better told and has way better characterization for our cast, this again didn't feel as missed as, let's say, the A and B scenario from Remake 2. Since with that gone, the story felt much more confusing with how they handled it. The next is one boss, the Worm, which I'm sorry was never interesting or fun to fight. The only reason I remember is because it looked like a giant penis. It also helps that every boss fight in this game is done so much better than the original Resident Evil 3. Lastly, some areas have either been taken out or replaced. I won't sit here and say the spots taken out was a good idea, as even though areas like the park, graveyard, and newsroom were only like 5 minutes in length, it still would have been nice to see them with modern graphics. The only cut area I miss is inside a clock tower. We see the outside of it but never go in, which is a shame, since that was very mansion-like in the original, and it's always nice to visit those type of areas in a Resident Evil game. They also could have added some puzzles in there, which again was lacking in this game. Also, that factory has been replaced with a nest lab, which makes more sense since this game is connected to Remake 2, which had a nest lab as well. The good thing is, no water sample puzzle. Fuck that puzzle. Another thing gone is mercenary mode, which is odd and disappointing, especially with what it got replaced with. After completing the game at least once, you unlock the shop, and this will add some replay value. As you may have noticed, there is a challenge menu before you start the game, with multiple goals like kill X amount of zombies, beat the game without opening your storage box, beat it on harder difficulties, and more. Not only do these give you some artwork and models to look at, they also give you points to spend in the shop, and every stat is kept, so that kill X amount can be earned over time if you don't feel like grinding in one playthrough. The shop has some neat things like infinite ammo for certain weapons, a pretty damn good rendition of Jill's RE1 outfit, special weapons like a flame knife, starting off with extra pouches, and more. You don't have to worry about missing out on anything, as all the points you earn will add up to buying everything. It's just more of what you want to buy first. Of course, there's also ranks you can go for by beating the game fast and saving only a certain amount of times. Thankfully, the game gives you the info. Also, as you beat the harder difficulties, more of them unlock, with Nightmare and Inferno leading to an interesting playthrough, as it ups how deadly every monster is, especially Nemesis, some item placements different like starting with the Magnum earlier, and adding more different enemies in certain areas. It's definitely worth a playthrough, just be sure you have some good shop items. Now the last thing to talk about is Resistance. I know it's kind of its own thing even with a separate trophy list, but I won't count it as such since it's clearly a part of the Remake 3 package. This is a 4 vs 1 multiplayer game with you either playing as part of a group of survivors or one of the masterminds like Annette Birkin. There is a tutorial to teach you the basics for both playstyles, and you can set up a practice mode to play alone, but that's about it for single player stuff. Each survivor is basically a certain class like a healer or a tank, and each have a skill complementing that class. You go through 3 timed areas with different goals, which could be complete the puzzle, activate the console, or smash the tubes. As you're doing all of this, the mastermind is trying to stop you by laying traps and spawning monsters, and each time you're attacked, you are deducted time, with the biggest deduction being your death and respawn. You can find healing items and even ammo laying around, but what you need is credits, since each time you complete an area, you can buy more items like different weapons, health, and ammo. Finish the third area and escape to win. The mastermind, as I mentioned, has you playing a Resident Evil villain, and for this gameplay, it's all cards. Yep, you heard me right, you get cards to build a deck. Once the game starts, you can use any cards, which can be used to summon monsters or lay down some traps. You're even allowed to possess certain monsters to give said monster a boost and make sure you attack who you want to. You're able to see the area by switching cameras, but be warned, if the player notices you, they can take out a camera and you would have to wait a while to boot it up again. Speaking of waiting, each time you use a card, it wastes a certain amount of points depending on the card, and you have to wait for it to recharge. Finally, each mastermind has a special summon like Annette having William Birkin, and these summons are extremely powerful and run on a timer. The sole goal is just to make the survivors waste the time. After each game, win or lose, you get a certain amount of points which can be spent on loot box equipment or cosmetics. Good thing is there are no repeats, but everything's still random. Okay, I really didn't even want to talk about this game since it's fucking horrible. The hit reaction from shooting monsters feels delayed, and the game is really unbalanced. If you're facing a mastermind with a good level and knows what they are doing, you will pretty much always lose and most likely really fast. It's just not fun. What also sucks is I can see some good in this, like teaming up with some people to do some missions and escape. It's kinda like the Outbreak concept. But they had to fuck everything up by making it 4 versus 1 instead of purely a co-op experience. When you have to face a human player in these types of things, there's always a problem, especially when it's unbalanced. I would have gladly taken a remaster of Outbreak. Oh hell, I'll take one of Operation Raccoon City, as that was sure as hell more fun than this pile. The game looks fantastic, and I believe it really catches the atmosphere of chaos and dread. I mean, just by looking at the beginning, you can see this with people trying to escape their homes and failing to do so. It slows down a little bit as you walk around the streets of Raccoon City, seeing some of the aftermath of the chaos and the horror of the dead slowly taking over. As you play the game, you'll be visiting some varied areas like the sewers, the hospital, and even some of the areas from the RE2 remake like the RPD station to remind you that yes, this does take place before and even during that game. While I was happy to see some of the streets of Raccoon City and some stores, and they do look great, but I would be lying if I said that was enough. I could have done with some more street areas, not only for more sights, but for once again more Nemesis moments. The character models of course also look great, and I never thought this version of Jill's face was ugly like some people did. However, I will admit I was not a fan of her default outfit, at least at first. I think my main problem was if you're doing a remake of a game, the character should look similar to the original and her outfit doesn't resemble it at all. And it sucks, the only way to get the original outfit is pre-order or to eventually buy it as DLC. It should have been unlockable like her original RE1 outfit, and in fact it should have added a bit more outfits in general, just to have different looks for different playthroughs like in the original. I also wasn't a fan of Carlos's bushy new design, it just looked off. The rest of the human cast looks similar to the original RE3, which is fine with me. The creature design is pretty well done as well, as they do look more threatening and grotesque. I dig the new designs of both the hunters, and don't mind some of the zombies are reused from the RE2 remake, as it's not unusual for the RE games to do. While I will always favor the original Nemesis design, I actually really like his new look. I mean, he looks legit terrifying and his other forms match that. The only problem I had with it was the dumb caution signs all over him, as it reminded me when they put the word damage on a Joker's head. It's just, again, stupid. One nitpick I had with the zombies is now when you blow the limbs off, they just poof into thin air. This was a disappointment since Remake 2 had the limbs come off in such a satisfyingly gory way. I really don't get the reason for this change. The voice acting of our cast is great as well, and there is still a bit of cheese here and there with some of the lines.
Really? Way to go, partner. One step ahead.
Not your partner.
I personally didn't run into any technical situations, and the game ran smooth for me, with only one odd visual and sound choice in a specific section when the zombies disintegrate and make a comical splat sound for some dumb reason. Man, I had a wonderful time playing through this game, and it was a visual treat and had some good atmosphere. I like how the story was told, the characterization of our cast, and of course the overall gameplay. I wish we got some more puzzles. As I mentioned, it was really lacking even compared to the Resident Evil 2 remake, and I did miss some of the content from the original, mainly the inside of the clock tower. But even with those negatives, I still got a great deal of enjoyment out of this. I clocked in 6 hours on my first playthrough on standard, and that's with searching for all the collectibles. I heard some complaints of the game being too short, and if you know Resident Evil games, you should know that the majority of them are pretty damn short. Replay value comes in the form of challenges, buying stuff from the shop, and the multiple playthroughs on different difficulties. They really should have kept mercenary mode in the game, as you heard my feelings of resistance already. After unlocking everything and beating all the difficulties, I got around 34 hours of gameplay. With Resident Evil 3 being my favorite Resident Evil game, I can say Remake 3 does do certain things much better than the original, and the original does certain things much better than the remake. But at the end of the day, they stand proudly side by side together. So I have no problem recommending this game and suggest you join Jill on her escape from Raccoon City. I hope you enjoy my thoughts on this game, and for gamer's sake, keep gaming.